Have you yourself been a part of this industry? Have you worked actually as a freelancer or a sex worker, or are you currently working? What is it like?
Yes, I started doing sex work during my university studies.
Okay.
Before that, I worked in an elderly home, and I was looking for a new job that would fit my needs at the time. I was studying full time, did a lot of volunteering in LGBTI projects,
Okay.
and I wanted to do that and also earn some money. And I was looking for someone that would allow all those activities and would be something that I enjoyed.
Okay.
So, and I found an escort agency that I felt comfortable with and started working there.
Okay.
And I liked it so much more than I could imagine, actually.
Oh, all
Yeah.
right.
एम्स्टर्डम की लाल लाइटों में मैं हूं ट्रैवलिंग देसी और ये है म्यूजियम ऑफ प्रोस्टिट्यूशन। और रेड लाइट डिस्ट्रिक्ट वाली वीडियो पे लोगों की बड़ी लान तान बर्दाश्त करने के बाद एक बार मैं फिर से हाजिर हूं बातचीत करने के लिए एक डच सेक्स वर्कर से।
So today I am right now in PIC, which happens to be the Prostitution Information Center, and I'm sitting with a pretty lady who does not want obviously her face to be in the frame for obvious reasons. But yeah, of course, if you want to meet her, she's pretty much present here all the time. But there are a few important questions which I wanted to ask her to have a bit more idea from the alternate side of what most people know about the red light district of Amsterdam. So Velvet. Velvet is your name, right?
Yes, Velvet December.
Perfect. Thank you so very much for your time, first of all.
Okay.
Can we start with a brief introduction of what PIC and Proud are?
Yes, well, we are in the space of the PIC right now, the Prostitution Information Center. It was started by a sex worker herself, and
Okay.
she worked in the red light district in the 90s, and she noticed that there were a lot of questions
Okay.
from sex workers themselves, but also from tourists and visitors in the area about sex work in the Netherlands and
Okay.
about the area specifically. So she started the Prostitution Information Center, and to this day we inform visitors, tourists, students with information about sex work from a sex worker perspective.
Okay.
And Proud is the Dutch Sex Worker Union. It's a relatively new organization since 2015.
Okay.
And so that is really focused towards the sex workers themselves. So we function as a union.
Perfect. So, can you introduce yourself also, just so that we know whom we are talking to?
Yeah, so my name is Velvet. I'm the advocacy coordinator at Proud, the
Okay.
sex worker union, sex worker activist, and also work for the PIC. I
Alright.
really like to share info about
Alright.
sex work policy in specifically. Yeah.
So basically, your role here is to provide information to anyone who is curious about exactly what goes on in here.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
और ये है म्यूजियम ऑफ प्रोस्टिट्यूशन जिसमें एम्स्टर्डम की इस हिस्टोरिक इंडस्ट्री के बारे में इन डेप्थ नॉलेज मिल सकती है। जिसमें सबसे पहले तो एक शॉर्ट फिल्म में सेक्स वर्कर्स के डेली रूटीन और उनके चैलेंजेस दिखाए जाते हैं। और उसके बाद इस इंडस्ट्री से जुड़े लोगों के इंटरव्यू और उनकी मैनेजमेंट ऑफिस में एक बैकडोर लुक।
From your story, I understand that this could be mostly a voluntary, let's say, work,
Yes.
if I may call it so. But we also have stories that in many cases it's not as voluntary as it may look like. So when we speak about in general terms in the whole red light district, are people, are the workers who are working here working entirely on voluntary basis, or they have some kind of a social pressure or pressures from anyone, or even things like pimping? Do these things go around here?
Well, pimping is something that is sort of this mythical fairy tale like Hollywood movie thing. The way that it is portrayed in the media doesn't happen that often in real life.
Okay.
And of course, it also depends on your definition of what voluntarily motivated is. I was also dependent on the work for my income.
Yes.
So it's not like it's all just for fun. And I mean, if you have to feed your kids, if you don't have any other options, it can still be that you actively choose to do the work without any force from a third party.
Okay.
But maybe it's not the job that you desire, but you know, you got to make ends meet, and
Yes.
sometimes this is an option for people that is sometimes not the problem, but the solution to a lot of problems.
Perfect.
Yes.
Can completely understand the idea. और इस म्यूजियम में आके आप फील ले सकते हैं रेड लाइट के अंदर बैठने की दिस साइड ऑफ द विंडो व्हिच इज काइंड ऑफ एन एक्सपीरियंस बट मुझे कोई देख नहीं रहा सो लेट्स जस्ट मूव।
और आपने कभी सोचा है कि लाल या रेड लाइट ही क्यों? तो यहाँ पे तो ये लिखा है कि लाल लाइट स्किन को ज़्यादा स्मूथ दिखाती है और एसटीडीज के विजिबल साइंस को रिड्यूस करती है, तो ज़रा बच के।
So you just told me that you kind of started to like working in the industry. So do you think that you would want to extend it, or you thought that there could be a dependence? Because for many people, a way of seeing it is easy money. So do you think that it is a kind of a leverage that you could use and possibly could get dependent on it in the longer run?
Well, it's true that you can make quite some money in a short amount of time, but it's definitely not necessarily easy money.
Yes.
It's not a job for everyone. I really liked it, but I also saw that it was not as much about sex as I thought it would be. There's a lot of emotional labor. You have to have a certain confidence to do the work, and the connections with people I find very beautiful, and I continued after graduating my studies because I thought it was very valuable work actually, and that I really enjoyed. But if you work in this industry for a long time, you can have some obstacles moving to another industry because it's not necessarily something that you can put on your resume. So there's so much stigma around it that makes it hard to leave. Yeah.
Yes, I completely understand. So two questions that come to my mind out of what you just said. You said it's a lot of money. I would want to know exactly, not exactly, approximately how much a young worker who's working in the industry in these windows outside would make, let's say, working 3 or 4 days a week in about a month's time.
इसके आंसर पे तो थोड़ी देर में आते हैं, मगर इस म्यूजियम में कुछ गिज़मोस भी हैं। और कई ट्रिविया टाइप इंटरेस्टिंग फैक्ट स्टडीज भी। बट यहाँ पे फिर विंडोज के अंदर का नजारा भी दिखता है।
And in case of what you earn, depends on the kind of work that you do. And so there are people that make a lot of money in the window, and there are people that do not make that much money. And it really depends on...
Can I have a range of a figure, like from,
well,
let's say, if we speak weekly, let's say a woman who works like 4 days a week, maybe 8-hour shifts, from the one who's like, you know, the best at what she does, and to someone who's average, what would be the price range of?
Well, I really couldn't say. I think that, well, of course, to be able to cover the costs to be in the window, you need to make at least 150 to 200 euros a day, so that you can rent the space to work in, to create, to make it even.
Okay.
So depending on depending on what you do and how many clients you have, but there are good days and bad days, or good weeks, and and in escorting you're paid by the hour, and you might not see as many clients per day.
And how much is that, like in the escorting industry, if you were to be paid by an hour, only if you could disclose?
Well, it's three figures. I wouldn't say.
3 figures. Wow, so you get 3 figures per hour. That's impressive. All right.
Yeah, but then part of that is for me and part of that is for the manager.
Okay.
And that's not the case in the window. So in the window you pay the rent for the room, but then what you earn is yours.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's all different ways of working, and like in porn it's different also.
Yeah.
And you're
So would it be safe to say that it could be somewhere between 500 to 800 or 1,000 euros a day, by any chance, something like that?
a very big range. Yeah,
Okay.
indeed. Yeah, but I think that in general you can make more in the sex industry than in another well, minimum wage job.
Of
So
course.
yeah, yeah,
Of course.
yeah.
तो विंडोज के अंदर का सीन कुछ ऐसा होता है.
Now, finally, I would want to ask the most important question. We hear stories about the legislations moving in by the government to ban the whole thing in the city, or even there is a step that has already been taken to close the guided tours in the region because people believe that it's not a good idea to portray the workers as tourist monuments or something like that, for that matter. So how do you have to reply to that?
Well, the city of Amsterdam created this problem themselves. They attracted a lot of tourists to the city and really marketed certain spaces as hotspots. So, so let's put that as a first, that they've created this problem themselves. And now sex workers have to deal with the repercussions of that. And windows are being closed, and which they say is beneficial for the workers, but taking someone's workspace is obviously not beneficial for a worker. It's basically a project of gentrification in this area. And banning the tours, right now they're not allowed anymore after 7 in the evening. And what we see now is that between around 5 and 7, it's extremely busy, and people doing day shifts have to quit earlier because there's just so many people. So restrictions on tours have not, in my opinion, not done anything positive yet. And the guides in this area, the tour guides, have a very important function, because they can explain to people how to behave, what the rules of the game are in this area, and that it's also a living area and where people work, and it's not just a party space. And you cannot take photos of someone who's working, and the repercussions that it has. So we see that when people just move about freely, then there's no one to explain this to them anymore. So it doesn't necessarily have a positive effect. It's not like if there are no tour guides, that there are no tourists. And the tourists, especially in this area, are the biggest part of the clientele of the sex workers. So the sex workers don't want the tourists gone.
Of course.
Yeah.
और कई लोग यहाँ पे रोल प्ले टाइप फोटोज भी खिंचवा लेते हैं.
और यहाँ पे बहुत सारा सामान रखा है जो लोग सर्विस के लिए जब आते हैं तो अंदर ही छोड़ जाते हैं.
और इनमें शामिल है एक पूरी बत्तीसी, और गोलियां. और यहाँ पे विंडो जिसमें सामान छूट गया था उसका नंबर और तारीख भी लिखी है.
So, is there some form of registration that the workers need to do to register themselves as a sex worker, and how difficult or easy is the process?
Yeah, it's a legal profession, and if you want to work in the windows, you have to be inscribed with the Chamber of Commerce as an independent worker
Okay.
under personal service providing. And then when you go to a manager to rent a space, to rent a window, you have to be able to show your inscription with the Chamber of Commerce,
Okay.
some registration of your housing in the Netherlands. You have to have a Dutch bank account, be over the age of 21,
Okay.
and have a European passport.
All right. So anyone having a European passport, particularly European Union, can work in these windows?
In theory, yes, if you abide by all the regulations.
Regulations, of course.
Yeah. And then the manager would do an intake conversation to see what your motivation is to do the work, if there's no obvious third party interfering with what you're doing. And then you can rent the space for either a day shift or a night shift, that's up to you.
Okay.
And yeah, for multiple days or maybe just every so and so, it's up to you. Yeah.
बट ये पूरी दुनिया के सबसे मुश्किल तरीन कामों में से एक है, और उसका एहसास मुझे म्यूजियम की इस कुर्सी पर बैठकर हो गया था।
और यहाँ पे बैठ के पता लगता है कि जो लड़कियाँ विंडोज़ के अंदर होती हैं, लोग आते जाते हैं, उनको इशारे करते हैं, देखते हैं, तो कैसा फील होता है। इट्स प्रीटी सैड एक्चुअली। And because this whole thing is a little frowned upon, and the topic itself is, kind of stereotype, and there are so many people having so many different kind of judgments about the whole idea. So there could be instances where women might not feel safe, or could have difficulty finding their own security or mental peace, let's say. In this case, what are the security measures that are available to them in case they have someone who would not want to leave, or someone poses as a security risk, or someone gets rude, aggressive, violent in that case?
Well, for me, that's a little bit different than for people in the window. I worked for a lesbian escort agency, so that means that my clients are women.
Okay.
Of course, well, contact with women is different than with men. But of course, then, because it's a lesbian escort agency, we do face lesbophobia. So maybe there are men posing to be women and trying to book one of us, while they're actually, lesbophobic people who do not mean well.
Okay.
But I trust the manager of the agency to screen the clients. So that is a way of ensuring safety, that the manager is someone, at least for an escort agency, who's in between the escort and the client. For a window worker, that's not the case, because she approaches the client directly, or the client approaches her or him. But in the window, we found that in a recent research by Proud and SOA AIDS Nederland, that the windows are actually a very safe space to work. Because your clients can only enter if you open the door. Your colleagues are nearby, because the rooms are connected in the back.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And there's always people present in the office above the windows.
Okay.
And there is a panic button present that if something really is up, then you can press the button and, help is there within seconds.
Help in form of the managers or the employees or the organizers or the property?
And it depends a bit on which brothel it concerns. And in some, there's also an immediate call to the police.
Okay.
And police is very much present in this area. They control, walk around. So the red light district in Amsterdam is actually a very safe space to work. And it's safer than escorting or working from home independently.
Yes, because there are a lot of people apparently, so no one can, mean harm or cause harm and get unnoticed.
And if the panic button is pressed, then it's usually an issue of money. someone wanting their money back, or being drunk and not being able to leave anymore, or something like that. It's luckily not often very violent encounters.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So, how often would any of this kind of case come up? Like, is it really common for the panic button to be pushed? Or
Issues with people looking at you in a funny way,
Yeah.
spitting at the window. So because you are so visible, that also means that the people that do not like you are able to make that very clear to you. So
Because I went to the museum of prostitution, and they have a display where you can sit on a bench and see how awkward it could possibly be with hundreds of people passing by, giving you looks, that kind of stuff, and all kind of people. So it does take some level of courage to be inside those windows.
I think it takes a lot of guts, but sitting there doesn't have to be awkward, as you might have experienced it. I sat in that chair in the museum as well, and I enjoyed it actually. Yeah.
All right. So you told that you work for a lesbian industry. So are you bisexual or lesbian? Or
I'm a lesbian.
Oh, all right. Okay.
और फिर आता है म्यूजियम में एक कन्फेशन सेक्शन जहां पे विजिटर अपनी इरोटिक कन्फेशंस लिख जाते हैं और मजे मजे में एक मैंने भी डाल दी। अब मैं पर्सनली ना इस चीज को सपोर्ट करता हूं और ना अपोज, क्योंकि मेरा काम जर्नलिस्ट की तरह आपको दुनिया की अनोखी चीजें दिखाना और तरह तरह के लोगों के विचार आप तक पहुंचाना है, पर उन पर तबसरा करना नहीं। और हर सिस्टम की तरह इसमें भी अपने फायदे और अपने नुकसान हैं, जिनका तयन करने का फैसला मैं आप पर छोड़ देता हूं। बट आपका ऐसी वीडियोस के बारे में क्या ख्याल है, मुझे प्लीज कमेंट्स में जरूर बताइएगा। और अगर आपको ये वीडियो अच्छी लगी हो तो प्लीज लाइक बटन दबाना मत भूलिएगा, और दुनिया की ऐसी ही और वीडियोस के लिए प्लीज डोंट फॉरगेट टू हिट द सब्सक्राइब बटन एंड द बेल आइकॉन।